They threw Coca-Cola on the waitress for fun, laughing as she stood there dripping and humiliated. Just another nobody they could disrespect without consequences. What they didn't know, her husband was a mafia boss. And he'd just found out what they did to his wife. Sofia Martinez had been on her feet for 6 hours straight. The Riverside Grand Hotel's crystal ballroom sparkled under 1,000 lights as Manhattan's wealthiest clinked champagne glasses and laughed too loud. Sofia moved between tables like a ghost, refilling drinks, clearing plates, invisible to the people whose net worth could buy her apartment building 10 times over. She didn't mind being invisible. In fact, she preferred it. More champagne, table 7, her manager hissed, snapping his fingers. Sofia nodded, balancing a silver tray as she weaved through designer gowns and tailored suits. Table 7 was the worst. 5 men in their late 20s, drunk since cocktail hour, celebrating something they called the Marlowe expansion. Their laughter had an edge to it, the kind that came from people who'd never been told no. Finally, one of them drawled as Sofia approached. His name tag read Ethan Marlowe. Blonde hair, perfect teeth, a watch that cost more than her car. Thought we'd die of thirst. My apologies, sir. Sofia kept her voice neutral, professional. She'd learned long ago not to react. As she poured, Ethan grabbed his friend's phone, scrolling through something that made them all cackle. Sofia caught a glimpse, photos of themselves posing with bottles, making faces. Rich boys playing at being wild. Sofia, right? Ethan squinted at her name tag. That's pretty. You got a boyfriend, Sofia? I'm married, sir. Married? His friends erupted in exaggerated gasps. Lucky guy. What's he do? Let me guess, waiter? Uber driver? Sofia's jaw tightened. He works in construction. This sent them into hysterics. Construction. Classic. Bet he's got a beer gut and a pickup truck. She said nothing. The champagne bottle was empty. She should leave. Wait. Ethan stood up, swaying slightly. The room was loud enough that no one else noticed. I got a question. When you go home tonight, you gonna tell him about us? About how you serve rich people all day? Ethan, sit down, one of his friends muttered, but he was grinning, phone raised. I'm just curious, Ethan continued, louder now. A few nearby tables glanced over. Does it bother you, seeing all this? He gestured at the ballroom. Knowing you'll never have it. Sofia's heart pounded. Have a good evening, gentlemen. She turned to leave. Hey, I'm talking to you. What happened next took 3 seconds, but Sofia would remember it in slow motion forever. Ethan grabbed a glass of Coca-Cola from the table, one of the sodas they'd ordered for mixing drinks. He took 2 steps forward. And then, while his friends howled with laughter and one raised a phone to record, he poured the entire glass over Sofia's head. The liquid was cold. Shockingly cold. It ran down her face, her neck, soaking into her white uniform blouse. Ice cubes hit her shoulders and scattered across the marble floor. The nearby tables went silent. Women gasped. Men stared. Sofia stood frozen, Coke dripping from her hair, her eyelashes. She couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The humiliation was physical, crushing, a weight on her chest that made the room spin. Ethan's friends were dying laughing, slapping the table. Oh my God, dude. Did you get that? Send it to the group chat. What is going on here? The manager appeared, his face red, eyes darting between Sofia and the Marlowe table. He took one look at Ethan's smirking face, and his expression changed. Fear. She was rude to our guests, Ethan said casually, sitting back down. Just teaching some manners. The manager grabbed Sofia's arm. I am so sorry, Mr. Marlowe. Sofia, go to the break room. Now. But I didn't. Now. Sofia stumbled away, past the staring faces, past the whispers. Her shoes squelched with each step. Someone's date covered her mouth, eyes wide with secondhand embarrassment. An older woman looked away, uncomfortable but silent. No one said anything. No one helped. In the staff bathroom, Sophia locked the door and stared at her reflection. Coca-Cola matted her dark hair. Her mascara ran in black streaks. The blouse, the one she'd ironed carefully this morning, was ruined. She didn't cry. She'd learned years ago that crying changed nothing. Her phone buzzed. A text from her husband. "How's work, amor?" Sophia stared at the message. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She could tell him. She could tell Dante everything. But then what? People like the Marlowes didn't face consequences. They owned buildings like this one. They owned managers and lawyers and probably half the city council. If she complained, she'd lose her job. If Dante complained, he'd look crazy. A construction worker going after a billionaire family.
No.
Better to stay quiet. Better to survive. She typed back, "Fine. Home by midnight. Love you." She deleted the coke-soaked blouse in a trash bag, changed into her backup uniform, and returned to her shift with her head down. What Sophia didn't know, what none of them knew, was that one of the kitchen staff, a young guy named Marco who'd always been kind to her, had watched the whole thing. Marco, who was furious enough to do something stupid. Marco, who knew exactly who Sophia was married to. And by dawn, a video of Ethan Marlowe pouring soda on a waitress would be sitting on the desk of Dante Morelli, the man who controlled every cement truck, every steel shipment, every construction permit in New York City. The man who built this city's foundations. The man whose wife had just been humiliated in front of Manhattan's elite. But that night, as Sophia rode the subway home with wet hair and a fake smile, she had no idea that in less than 7 days, the Marlowe family would learn a lesson they'd never forget. You don't disrespect a queen just because she's wearing an apron. Luca Romano had worked for Dante Morelli for 15 years. In that time, he delivered a lot of bad news. Arrests, betrayals, shipments gone wrong. He'd learned to keep his face neutral, his voice steady. But this morning, driving through pre-dawn Manhattan with his phone burning a hole in his pocket, his hands gripped the steering wheel too tight. The video had come at 5:47 a.m. An unknown number. No message, just a file. Luca almost deleted it, probably spam. Then he pressed play. 23 seconds that made his blood go cold. By 6:15, he was pulling up to Dante's brownstone in Brooklyn, the one that didn't appear on any property records. The one with flowers in the window boxes and a basketball hoop in the driveway. The house that looked like it belonged to a normal family. Maria, Dante's housekeeper, let him in with a knowing look. He's having breakfast. Dante sat at the kitchen table in a white t-shirt and reading glasses, newspapers spread before him, an espresso cooling beside his hand. At 45, he still had the build of the construction worker he'd once been, broad shoulders, calloused hands. His hair was graying at the temples. He looked like any other working-class guy starting his day. He glanced up.
Luca.
6 in the morning. This better be important. Luca set his phone on the table. You need to see this. Dante frowned but picked up the phone. Luca watched his boss's face as the video played. The ballroom. The laughter. Ethan Marlowe's smirking face. The glass tipping. Sophia's frozen expression as Coca-Cola poured over her head. Dante's jaw tightened. His knuckles went white around the phone. The video ended. Silence filled the kitchen except for the tick of the wall clock. When? Dante's voice was quiet. Dangerous. Last night. Riverside Grand Hotel. Some charity gala. Luca paused. Kitchen worker sent it to me. Kid named Marco. He's clean, works with Sophia sometimes. Said he couldn't sleep after watching it happen. Dante played the video again. And again. His face showed nothing, but Luca knew that look. That stillness. It was the same expression Dante wore before he dismantled a rival crew in the 90s. The same face he had when someone crossed a line you didn't come back from. She didn't tell me. Dante set the phone down carefully. She came home, said work was fine. Kissed me goodnight like nothing happened. She probably didn't want you to worry. Worry, Dante laughed hollow. My wife gets humiliated in public, and she's worried about me. He stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Outside, the neighborhood was waking up, a garbage truck rumbling past, someone walking a dog. Normal life. The life Sophia had tried to protect by staying silent. I want everything on the kid in the video, Dante said. Everything on the hotel. Who owns it? Who was there? Who? Boss, Luca's voice stopped him. There's more. Watch the background. Around the 12-second mark. Dante picked up the phone again, his brow furrowed. He watched.
Paused. Zoomed in.
And froze. Behind Ethan, barely visible in the crowd, stood an older man in an expensive suit. Late 50s, gray hair, confident posture. He was holding a drink, talking to someone, oblivious to what his son was doing 10 feet away. That's Richard Marlowe, Luca said quietly. Dante's face went pale. No.
Yeah.
Richard Marlowe. My Richard Marlowe? Same guy. Dante sat down heavily. For the first time since Luca had known him, his boss looked genuinely shaken. Richard Marlowe, the legitimate businessman Dante had been working with for 3 years through carefully constructed shell companies. The real estate developer who needed Dante's cement suppliers and union connections, but could never know who Dante really was. Their arrangement had been perfect, profitable, quiet, deniable. 3 shared construction projects worth $40 million. Contracts that looked clean on paper, but funneled cash through backdoor channels. Richard got buildings built on time and under budget. Dante got his money laundered through legitimate development deals. They'd met face-to-face only twice, always in neutral locations, always carefully. Richard thought Dante was just a well-connected contractor. Dante had intended to keep it that way. That's his son. Dante's voice was barely a whisper. Ethan Marlowe, 27, heir to the family business. Princeton education. Zero work ethic. Luca pulled up a photo on his own phone. Party boy. DUIs covered up. Harassment complaints settled quietly. Daddy's golden child. Dante stared at the frozen frame of Richard in the background.
He was there.
He saw it happen. Looks like it. And he did nothing. Luca said nothing. There was nothing to say. Dante stood again, his movements sharp now, controlled rage replacing shock. He walked to the coffee maker, poured a cup he didn't drink, set it down. Thinking. Calculating. Call everyone, he said finally. Meeting tonight. I want intel on every Marlowe project, every contract, every permit, every dollar they owe. I want to know where they bank, where they're vulnerable, who they're afraid of. Boss, if we move on them, the business arrangement is over. Dante's voice cut like steel. You don't get to humiliate my wife and then expect me to help build your empire. Luca nodded. What about Sophia?
Does she know about
Any of this? She knows I work construction.
She knows I do well.
She doesn't know the rest. Dante's expression softened for just a moment. She thinks I'm a union foreman who got lucky. I want to keep it that way. That might be hard if. Dante's phone buzzed. Then Luca's. Then both phones lit up with news alerts. Marlowe Group issues statement after viral incident. Luca grabbed his phone, scrolling. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. The press release was already everywhere, pushed to major outlets at 7 a.m. sharp. Marlowe Group regrets the unfortunate incident at last night's charity gala. While we support all service industry workers, preliminary investigations suggest the employee in question behaved unprofessionally toward guests prior to the incident. We take workplace conduct seriously and trust the Riverside Grand Hotel will address this matter appropriately. The Marlowe family remains committed to. The rest was corporate nonsense. Dante read it twice. His face had gone cold again, that dangerous stillness returning. They're blaming her, he said softly. They're covering their asses, Luca corrected. Trying to control the narrative before it spreads. Before it spreads, Dante set his phone down with deliberate care. They think this goes away with a press release. They think I'll read this and let it go because of our business. They think I need them more than they need me. He looked up at Luca, and for the first time that morning, he smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Call the meeting for tonight. And Luca? Find out everything about their current construction projects. I want to know which ones can't finish without us. All of them, boss. They all need us. Good. Dante picked up his coffee, finally taking a sip. Then let's see how they build an empire when the foundation crumbles. Outside, the sun rose over Brooklyn, painting the brownstone gold. Inside, a war had just been declared. The Marlowes just didn't know it yet. The meeting room was in a warehouse in Red Hook that officially stored restaurant equipment. Unofficially, it was where Dante held court when decisions needed to be made away from listening devices and prying eyes. By 8 p.m., 7 men sat around a metal table under fluorescent lights. These were Dante's captains, the men who ran his operations across the city. Construction supply, trucking, unions, waste management. The legitimate businesses that generated millions while quietly moving money from less legitimate sources. Tommy the Hammer Bergosi spoke first. He was old school, 60 years old with scarred knuckles and zero patience. We grabbed the kid. Tonight. Make an example. Agreed, said Victor Chen, who ran the cement contracts. You disrespect the boss's wife, you disappear. Simple. Murmurs of agreement rippled around the table. Lucas stood in the corner, arms crossed, silent. He'd already had this conversation with Dante in the car. He knew how it would end. Dante sat at the head of the table, perfectly still, letting them talk. He'd barely spoken since they'd arrived, just listened to the escalating suggestions. Grab Ethan. Scare him. Break something. Send a message. We can make it look like a robbery, offered Joey Falcone, youngest of the group at 35. Rich kid gets mugged in the wrong neighborhood. Teaches him about respect. Or we burn one of his cars, Tommy added. That Porsche he drives?
Gone.
Let him explain that to Daddy. Enough. Dante's voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the chatter like a blade. The room went silent. He stood, walking to a whiteboard mounted on the wall. Someone had already taped up printed photos. Ethan Marlowe, Richard Marlowe, the Riverside Grand Hotel, the Marlowe Group logo. What do you think happens, Dante said slowly, if we grab Ethan Marlowe tonight? Tommy frowned. He learns a lesson.
No.
His father calls the police. The real police, not the ones we know. FBI gets involved because kidnapping crosses state lines. Every camera in Manhattan gets reviewed. Every phone gets tapped. Dante turned to face them. We get heat we don't need over a spoiled kid. So, we do nothing? Victor's voice rose with frustration. They humiliate Sophia, and we just take it. I didn't say we do nothing. Dante's eyes went cold. I said we don't grab him. This isn't the 90s, Victor. We don't solve problems with baseball bats anymore. Then what? Tommy spread his hands. They already put out that press release calling Sophia unprofessional. They're making her the villain. Every hour we wait, their version becomes the truth. Dante had read the press release a dozen times. Each reading made his jaw tighten more. Sophia had come home at midnight, exhausted, and gone straight to bed. She still didn't know it had gone public. Didn't know strangers on the internet were debating whether she deserved it. She'd wake up tomorrow to a nightmare. This isn't about Ethan, Dante said quietly. It's about Richard Marlowe. That got their attention. Richard Marlowe is a businessman, Dante continued. He thinks in dollars and contracts. His son humiliated my wife because he's a spoiled brat who's never faced real consequences. But Richard? He saw it happen and did nothing. Then he put out that statement blaming Sophia. You know why? Silence. Because he thinks I need him more than he needs me. He thinks our business arrangement protects him. He thinks I'll swallow this insult to keep the money flowing. Dante's voice hardened. He's wrong. Luca finally spoke from the corner. The Marlowe Group has 4 major projects in development right now. Combined value, $1.2 billion. He clicked a remote. The whiteboard screen changed to show a spreadsheet. Hudson Yards Residential Tower. Tribeca Mixed-Use Development. Queens Waterfront Condos. Brooklyn Luxury Apartments. Luca highlighted each one. Every single project uses our cement, our trucks, our steel suppliers, our union labor. Understanding dawned on faces around the table. They're also waiting on permits, Luca continued. The Brooklyn project needs environmental clearance. The Queens development needs zoning variances. Both are tied up in city council committees where we have friends. And their financing? Dante asked. Two primary lenders, Chase and Goldman. Both have short-term construction loans that need to be refinanced in the next 90 days if projects run over schedule, Luca smiled grimly. Which they will, if anything goes wrong. Tommy leaned back in his chair, finally getting it. You want to choke their business. I want to dismantle it brick by brick, Dante corrected. Richard Marlowe humiliated my wife in public. I'm going to humiliate his empire. How long? Victor asked. 1 week. Maybe less. Dante pulled out a marker, writing on the whiteboard. Contracts. Permits. Financing. Reputation. These are his pressure points. We squeeze each one systematically. No violence. No obvious connections. Just a series of very unfortunate problems that Richard can't solve. And the kid? Joey asked. Ethan? Ethan is a symptom. His father is the disease. Dante capped the marker. But don't worry. When this is over, Ethan Marlowe will wish we'd just grabbed him. What's coming is worse than broken bones. He turned back to face his crew. Here's how this works. For the next 24 hours, nobody touches the Marlowes. No threatening calls, no vandalism, nothing. I want everyone focused on intelligence gathering. Victor, I need every detail on their construction timeline. Tommy, talk to your union contacts. Which projects have labor issues we can amplify? Joey, find out who their investors are and what makes them nervous. What about their finances? Victor asked. Luca and I will handle that. Dante checked his watch. We meet again tomorrow night, same time. Come prepared with options, not opinions. We're not street thugs anymore, gentlemen. We're businessmen. And we're about to teach the Marlowe family what happens when you forget who actually runs the city. The men stood energized now, understanding the plan. This wasn't about revenge. It was about power. As they filed out, Tommy paused at the door. Boss? What about Sophia? When do we tell her what we're doing? Dante's expression softened for just a moment. We don't. She's been through enough. When this is over, all she'll know is that the Marlowes apologized. The rest stays between us. Tommy nodded and left. Alone with Luca, Dante pulled out his phone. A text from Sophia. Can't sleep. Keep thinking about work. I'm sorry I didn't tell you what happened. So she'd seen the news. His heart ached. He typed back. Nothing to be sorry for. I love you. We'll talk in the morning. Luca watched him. She's going to figure it out eventually. Maybe. Dante pocketed his phone. But by then, it'll be over. Come on. We have debt contracts to review. They turned off the lights and locked the warehouse. Outside, Brooklyn slept, oblivious. In Manhattan, Richard Marlowe probably slept too, confident his press release had contained the damage. He had no idea that his empire's foundation was already cracking. The countdown had begun. Day 3 began in a coffee shop in Midtown. Victor Chin sat across from a city planning clerk named Dennis Wu, an old college friend who owed him favors. They talked about basketball, families, the rising cost of rent. Casual. Normal. By the way, Victor said, sliding an envelope across the table. My daughter's school fundraiser. Hoping you can contribute.
Dennis peeked inside.
$5,000 in cash. His eyes widened, but he didn't hesitate. He'd taken Victor's money before. Of course. Happy to help. Appreciate it. Victor pulled out his phone, pretending to check messages. Random question. You still working on that Marlowe project in Brooklyn? The waterfront development? The Atlantic Yards expansion? Yeah, still sitting on my desk. Dennis sipped his coffee. Environmental impact review. Could take months. Could it take longer? Dennis met his eyes. Understanding passed between them. Could take 6 months. Maybe more if new concerns get raised. That would be unfortunate for them. Very unfortunate. Dennis pocketed the envelope. I'll make sure it gets the thorough review it deserves. Victor nodded and left. One pressure point activated. Across town, Tommy Bergosi stood in a construction trailer at the Hudson Yards tower site. The project superintendent, Mike Harrigan, was a union guy, one of theirs. We got a problem, Tommy. Mike spread blueprints across a folding table. Marlowe's behind schedule. They're pushing us to work faster, cut corners. How behind? 6 weeks. They need to pour foundation for the north wing by Friday, or they miss their deadline with the bank. Mike tapped the plans. But here's the thing, the cement order they placed? It's coming from Jersey, not your suppliers. Tommy's jaw tightened. They went around us.
Tried to.
Wanted to save money. Avoid union rates, Mike shrugged. But that Jersey company? They're having truck problems this week. Mechanical issues. Weird how that happens. Tommy smiled. Very weird. And our trucks could deliver. But the order would need to be placed through proper channels. At proper rates. And even then, Mike checked his watch. Might take a few extra days to schedule. Shame, Tommy clapped him on the shoulder. Keep me posted on their desperation level. As he left the trailer, Tommy called Dante. Hudson Yards is bleeding time. They're about to miss a critical pour.
Good.
Let them sweat. In a glass office tower in Lower Manhattan, Lucas sat across from Rebecca Morse, a risk analyst at Goldman Sachs. They dated briefly years ago, stayed friendly. She owed him nothing, but she remembered when he'd helped her brother avoid trouble with the wrong people. I need information, Lucas said quietly. Marlowe Group. What's their situation? Rebecca glanced at her computer screen, conflicted. Luca, I can't just. Off the record. Old friend asking another old friend. She sighed, typed something. They're leveraged. Heavily. For major projects all financed with short-term construction loans. The terms require completion milestones every 90 days, or the interest rate jumps 2 points. How close are they to those milestones? Close enough that any delays would be catastrophic, she lowered her voice. Between you and me, Goldman is already nervous. Marlowe's last quarterly report showed cost overruns. If these projects stall, we might not refinance. Which means they'd need to find new lenders fast. And if they can't, they'd have to liquidate assets, sell properties, possibly declare bankruptcy on the development arm. Rebecca looked at him carefully. Why are you asking? Just curious about the market, Lucas stood. Thanks, Rebecca. Give my best to your brother. Outside, he texted Dante. Goldman is wobbly. One more shake, and they bolt. By evening, Dante's team reconvened in the Red Hook warehouse. This time, the whiteboard was covered in details. Project 1. Hudson Yards Residential Tower. Value: $340 million. Status: 6 weeks behind schedule. Vulnerability: cement supply disrupted. Foundation pour, deadline Friday. Bank: Chase, nervous about timeline. Project 2. Tribeca Mixed-Use Development. Value: $280 million. Status: waiting on steel delivery. Vulnerability: our steel suppliers can delay shipments indefinitely. Bank: Goldman already anxious about cost overruns. Project 3. Queens Waterfront Condos. Value: $420 million. Status: zoning variance pending. Vulnerability: city council contacts can stall approval for months. Bank: Goldman, same loan officer as Tribeca. Project 4. Brooklyn Atlantic Yards Expansion. Value: $380 million. Status: environmental review. Vulnerability: review process extended to 6+ months. Bank: Chase, largest exposure to Marlowe Group. Dante studied the board like a general surveying a battlefield. Total exposure: $1.4 billion if you count the financing, Lucas said. But the actual construction value is $1.2. And it all depends on our cooperation. Victor added his report. The Brooklyn permits are frozen for at least 6 months. I've got 3 different city departments ready to discover new concerns. Traffic impact, historic preservation, wetlands protection, take your pick. The unions? Dante asked Tommy. Ready to walk on 2 projects if negotiations stall. We can manufacture labor disputes that tie them up for weeks, Tommy grinned. All perfectly legal. Just workers demanding fair treatment. Joey spoke up. I tracked their investor calls. Richard's been reassuring people all week that everything's fine. But 3 small investors already pulled out of the Queen's project. They're spooked by the negative press from the Sophia incident. Good, Dante circled the 2 bank names on the board. Chase and Goldman. 2 lenders, for vulnerable projects. Luca, can we buy their debt? Working on it. I've got 3 shell companies ready to purchase distressed construction loans. If the banks get nervous enough, they'll sell at a discount just to reduce exposure. Dante did the math in his head. If they controlled the debt, they controlled oxygen. The Marlows couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't make deals without going through people they didn't know were connected to Dante. Here's the sequence, Dante said, marker in hand. Tomorrow morning, Hudson Yards misses their foundation pour. Tomorrow afternoon, steel delivery to Tribeca gets delayed. By evening, Marlowe will be dealing with 2 crisis situations. That's when the banks start making worried phone calls. And when they're panicking about timelines, Luca continued, that's when my shell companies approach the banks about buying distressed debt. We swoop in looking like saviors. Victor nodded appreciatively. They won't even know we're behind it. Exactly, Dante capped the marker. Richard Marlowe thinks this is about a spoiled kid pouring soda. He doesn't understand he's already losing a war he doesn't know he's fighting. Tommy leaned forward. When does he realize? When it's too late, Dante checked his phone. A news alert. Marlowe Group stock down 3% on construction concerns. The market was already smelling blood. Gentlemen, we're not just mapping weak points anymore. We're activating them. Dante looked at each man. As of tomorrow morning, the Marlowe empire starts crumbling. Slowly enough that they don't panic. Fast enough that they can't stop it. What about Ethan? Joey asked. Kid's still posting on social media like nothing happened. Partying in the Hamptons this weekend. Dante's expression darkened. Let him party. When his father's empire collapses, Ethan will learn that some humiliations can't be fixed with daddy's money. The meeting ended. Men dispersed into the Brooklyn night, each with their assignments. Dante stayed behind, staring at the whiteboard. For projects, 2 banks, 1 week. His phone buzzed. Sophia, can't believe I'm trending on Twitter. People are so cruel. But I'm okay. We're okay. His chest tightened. She was trying to be strong, trying not to worry him. He typed back, you're the strongest person I know. This will pass. I promise. What he didn't say, it will pass because I'm going to make sure the people who hurt you lose everything. Dante turned off the lights. Tomorrow, the pressure began. The Marlows were about to learn that foundations don't just hold up buildings. They hold up empires. And Dante controlled every single one. The call came at 2:47 a.m. Richard Marlowe fumbled for his phone, squinting at the screen. Project manager, Hudson Yards. He sat up in bed, his wife groaning beside him. This better be important, Mike. Mr. Marlowe, we have a problem. The superintendent's voice was tight. The cement trucks didn't show up. Richard's brain struggled through sleep fog. What do you mean didn't show up? We have a critical pour scheduled for 6 a.m. I know, sir. But the Jersey supplier called an hour ago. Said their entire fleet is down for emergency maintenance. Transmission failures across multiple trucks. They can't deliver. All of them? At once. Richard was fully awake now. Alarm bells ringing. That's impossible. That's what I said. But they're adamant. Earliest they can deliver is next week. Next week. Richard threw off the covers, pacing. We miss this pour. We miss our milestone. Chase will trigger the penalty clause. That's $2 million. I'm aware, sir. Call our backup suppliers. Someone in this city has cement trucks. I've been calling for an hour. Mike's voice carried defeat. Everyone's booked solid or having equipment issues. It's like the whole supply chain picked tonight to fall apart. Richard's stomach nodded. Keep trying. Offer double rates. Triple. I don't care. We cannot miss that deadline. He hung up and immediately dialed his COO, then his head of operations. Within 20 minutes, his entire executive team was awake, making calls, pulling strings. Nobody could help. At 6:30 a.m., the Hudson Yards site sat silent. No cement trucks.
No pour.
Just union workers standing around, collecting hourly wages for doing nothing. At 7:15 a.m., Richard's phone rang again. Tribeca, project manager. Please tell me you have good news, Richard said. Steel delivery is delayed. Supplier says there's a traffic accident blocking their route. They'll try again tomorrow. Tomorrow? We're already behind schedule. I know, sir. I'm as frustrated as you are. Richard ended the call and threw his phone across his home office. It bounced off the leather couch. 2 projects. Same morning. Both critical delays. This wasn't coincidence. By 9 a.m., Richard sat in his Marlowe Group headquarters, a glass tower in Midtown with views of Central Park. His executive team filled the conference room, tired, confused, and increasingly nervous. Talk to me, Richard demanded. What the hell is happening? His COO, Patricia Vance, pulled up a spreadsheet. Hudson Yards, cement supplier claims mechanical failure across their fleet. Tribeca, steel delivery blocked by mysterious traffic incident. But here's what's weird, I called other developers. Nobody else is having supply problems. Just us, Richard said flatly. Just us. His CFO, Martin Ross, cleared his throat. The timing is unfortunate. Chase called this morning. They're aware of the Hudson Yards delay. If we don't pour foundation by Friday, the penalty clause activates. That's $2 million, plus they're considering raising our interest rate. On what grounds? Failure to meet milestone deadlines. It's in the contract. Richard's jaw clenched. One delay, and they're panicking? It's not just the delay. Martin pulled up his laptop. Our stock dropped 3% yesterday after that waitress incident went viral. Investors are jittery. Chase is asking if we're experiencing broader operational problems. The waitress incident. Sophia Martinez. Richard had hoped his press release would contain that situation. Instead, it had exploded. Think pieces about wealth inequality. Social media outrage. His son's face plastered across gossip sites. And now this. Get me new suppliers, Richard said. I don't care what it costs. We're trying, Patricia said. But every contractor we've contacted is either booked or she hesitated. Or what? Or giving us the runaround. Quotes that are 3 times normal rates. Delivery windows that don't help. It's like someone's poisoned the well. Richard stood, walking to the window. 43 floors below, Manhattan buzzed with construction cranes and traffic. His city. His empire. Someone was doing this. Someone with enough reach to disrupt supply chains, enough power to coordinate attacks on multiple projects simultaneously. But who? At noon, Ethan Marlowe sat in a Hamptons Beach club, mimosa in hand, laughing with friends. Dude, you're trending again, his buddy Chase said, scrolling through his phone. People are still talking about the waitress thing. Ethan rolled his eyes. It was a joke. People need to chill. Your dad's press release didn't help. Made it worse, actually. Dad knows what he's doing. Ethan waved a hand dismissively. By next week, nobody will remember her name. His phone buzzed. Dad calling. Again. Ethan declined the call. He'd already listened to one lecture this morning about family reputation and being more careful. He didn't need another. Everything cool? Chase asked.
Fine.
Just Dad stressing about work stuff. Ethan signaled for another mimosa. Nothing I need to worry about. What Ethan didn't know, what his father was frantically trying to tell him, was that Marlowe Group stock had dropped another 2% by lunch. That 2 major investors were requesting emergency calls. That rumors were starting to circulate about operational instability. The empire wasn't just stressed. It was showing cracks. By 4 p.m., Richard had made 17 calls. Every supplier gave him the same story: backed up equipment issues, scheduling conflicts. Some apologized profusely. Others were oddly curt. He sat alone in his office, staring at project timelines that were quickly becoming fantasies. His assistant knocked. "Mr. Marlowe? Goldman Sachs on line 3. They're asking about the Tribeca and Queens projects." Goldman, his other major lender. Richard picked up. "James, good to hear from you." Richard James Rothman's voice was professional but cool. "I wanted to touch base about your projects. We're hearing some concerning reports about delays. Minor setbacks. We're addressing them. Minor setbacks that are affecting 2 projects simultaneously? Our risk assessment team is getting nervous." "There's nothing to be nervous about. We have the situation under control." "Do you?" A pause. "Because our analysts are also looking at the negative publicity from earlier this week. Combined with these construction delays, it's creating a concerning pattern." Richard's hand tightened on the phone. "James, we've worked together for 10 years. When have I ever failed to deliver? There's a first time for everything. Look, I'm not making threats. I'm giving you a friendly heads up. If these delays continue, if more problems emerge, Goldman will need to reassess our position. We have shareholders to answer to." "I understand. I hope you do. Fix this, Richard. Quickly." The line went dead. Richard sat in silence, his reflection staring back from the dark computer screen. 2 banks circling. 2 projects stalled. Investors panicking. Stock dropping. 48 hours ago, everything had been fine. Now it felt like the ground was shifting beneath him. He thought about Sofia Martinez, the waitress, the video that wouldn't die. Could this be connected? Some kind of retaliation?
No.
Impossible. She was nobody. A restaurant worker. What could she possibly do to hurt him? He shook off the paranoia. This was just bad luck. Terrible timing. It would pass. Richard pulled up his contacts, started making more calls. There had to be someone who could deliver cement. Someone who owed him a favor. What he didn't realize, what he couldn't see, was that every call he made, every favor he tried to pull, every string he attempted to pull was connected to a web that all led back to one man. A man whose wife had been humiliated on camera while Richard stood by and did nothing. A man who was just getting started. In Brooklyn, Dante received updates throughout the day. Each one made him smile. Hudson Yards stalled. Tribeca stalled. Both banks circling. Stock down 5% total. He looked at Luca. Tomorrow, we tighten the noose. The war had begun. And Richard Marlowe was losing without even knowing he was fighting. Day 4 started with a phone call Richard never expected. "Mr. Marlowe, this is Diane Chen from the Department of Environmental Protection." The voice was polite, bureaucratic, deadly. "I'm calling about your Queens waterfront project." Richard's stomach dropped. "Another problem." "What about it?" "We've received concerns regarding potential wetland disturbance. We'll need to conduct an additional environmental impact assessment before we can approve your zoning variance. We already passed environmental review months ago. New information has come to light. Possible habitat for protected bird species. We take these matters very seriously." "How long will this take?" "Hard to say. Could be 60 to 90 days. Maybe longer if we find issues." 90 days. The Queens project was supposed to break ground in 3 weeks. Goldman was already nervous about Tribeca. Now this. "This is ridiculous," Richard said, trying to keep his voice level. "Who raised these concerns?" "Anonymous tip to our office. But we're obligated to investigate all credible reports." Diane's tone suggested the conversation was over. "You'll receive official notification by end of business today." She hung up. Richard stared at his phone. Anonymous tip. Just like the cement trucks mysteriously failing. Just like the steel deliveries getting delayed. Just like everything else falling apart this week. This wasn't coincidence. Someone was orchestrating this. By 10 a.m., the rumors started. It began on Urban Development Watch, a niche blog that covered New York real estate. A post titled, "Marlowe Group projects face multiple delays. what's really going on. The article was careful, avoiding direct accusations, but it asked uncomfortable questions. Sources close to several Marlowe Group construction sites report unusual delays this week. Cement suppliers, steel deliveries, and now permit issues. While each incident appears isolated, industry insiders are wondering if there's a deeper problem. Some point to the viral video of Ethan Marlowe's behavior at last week's charity gala as evidence of a company culture problem. Others suggest possible financial instability. By noon, the story had been picked up by 3 other real estate blogs. By 2 p.m., the New York Post real estate section ran a brief item: Marlowe Group faces construction headaches. By 4 p.m., Richard's investor line was ringing off the hook. Richard, what's going on? Marcus Chun, a Hong Kong investor with $30 million in the Tribeca project, didn't waste time with pleasantries. I'm reading about permit problems, supply chain issues. Should I be concerned? Absolutely not. Just some unfortunate timing. Unfortunate timing? Marcus's voice sharpened. I put serious money into this development based on your timeline. Now I'm hearing it could be delayed months. We're working through some temporary setbacks. The same week your son becomes a viral villain? The same week your stock drops 5%? Forgive me for seeing a pattern. Richard's jaw clenched. Marcus, I've never missed a deadline with you. Have I? There's always a first time. I want to call tomorrow with concrete answers. Not promises. Answers. The line went dead. 3 more calls followed. Different investors, same anxiety. Everyone wanted reassurance Richard couldn't provide because he didn't understand what was happening. Patricia Vance knocked on Richard's office door at 5 p.m., her face grim. More bad news? Richard asked. City Council postponed the vote on the Brooklyn Atlantic Yards variance. Said they need more time to review community feedback. Community feedback? We addressed all their concerns months ago. Apparently new concerns have emerged. Traffic studies. Historic preservation questions. A council member is calling for a full public hearing. Patricia sat down heavily. Richard, something's wrong. This isn't normal bureaucratic delay. It's coordinated. Richard had been thinking the same thing all day. Who has this kind of reach? Who can disrupt supply chains, influence city permits, and plant stories in real estate blogs simultaneously? Someone with serious power. Someone with connections across multiple industries. Patricia paused. Someone we pissed off. Richard's mind raced through possibilities. A competitor? A rival developer? But this felt personal, not just business. The waitress. Sophia Martinez. The woman from the video, Richard said slowly. Do we know anything about her? Patricia pulled up her tablet. Sophia Martinez. 32. Works at Riverside Grand Hotel. Been there 4 years. Lives in Brooklyn. Married, she scrolled. Husband is Dante Morelli. Listed occupation: construction contractor. Construction. Richard's blood went cold. What kind of contractor? His voice was barely a whisper. Patricia tapped more. Doesn't specify. But she stopped, her face going pale. Richard. Morelli. That name sounds familiar. From where? Your shell company contracts. The ones that source cement and steel at below market rates. Didn't we sign papers with the Morelli Construction Group 3 years ago? Richard's hands started shaking. He pulled up his private files, the ones his lawyer handled, the contracts he never looked at too closely because they saved him millions. There it was. Morelli Construction Group. Dante Morelli, principal. The man whose wife Ethan had humiliated was Richard's secret business partner. The man who controlled the supply chain that all 4 Marlowe projects depended on. Oh God, Richard whispered. Patricia stared at him. What? I need to make a call. Richard's voice was hollow. Get out, Richard.
Now.
She left, closing the door. Richard's fingers trembled as he scrolled through his contacts. There, the private number he'd used only twice before. The direct line to Dante Morelli's office. He pressed call. It rang once.
Twice. 3 times.
You've reached Morelli Construction. Leave a message. Voicemail. but Richard knew Dante had to be there, had to be watching this number. Dante, it's Richard Marlowe. I think we need to talk. About recent developments.
Call me back.
Please. He hung up and waited. 5 minutes.
10. 20.
No call back. Richard tried again. Voicemail. And again. Voicemail. And again. The message was clear. Dante Morelli wasn't taking his calls. At 7 p.m., Richard sat alone in his office, the city lights twinkling below. His empire, built over 30 years, was shaking. Stock down 7% now. 2 banks getting nervous. Investors demanding answers. Project stalled. All because his idiot son poured soda on a waitress.
No.
All because Richard had stood there and watched it happen. All because he'd released that press statement blaming her. All because he'd assumed the woman was nobody, powerless, someone who could be crushed without consequence. He'd been catastrophically wrong. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop calling. You'll get your meeting when I'm ready. Not before. Richard's hands trembled as he typed back. I can explain. Let me fix this. The response came immediately. You can't fix humiliation with a phone call, Richard.
You should know that by now.
Then nothing. The number went dark. Richard sat in the silence of his office, understanding finally settling over him like a burial shroud. Dante Morelli wasn't just angry. He wasn't looking for an apology or a payoff. He was systematically destroying everything Richard had built. And Richard had given him the blueprint 3 years ago, when they became partners. Outside, night fell over Manhattan. In the glass buildings and construction sites and city offices, the pieces of Dante's plan continued to fall into place. The noose was tightening, and Richard Marlowe had just realized his neck was in it. Richard's emergency board meeting began at 8 p.m. in the Marlowe Group's executive conference room. 12 people sat around polished mahogany, lawyers, executives, board members. All of them looked exhausted. We're being targeted, Richard said without preamble. Systematically. Deliberately. And I know by whom. He told them about Dante Morelli. About the shell companies. About Sophia Martinez. About the connection he'd been too blind to see. His head counsel, Gerald Strauss, went pale. You're saying our primary supplier is married to the woman in the video? I'm saying our primary supplier, I asked the woman's husband. And he's been cutting off our air supplies since Tuesday. Then we sue him, Patricia said. Breach of contract. Tortious interference. We bury him in litigation. Gerald held up a hand.
Wait.
Let me pull those contracts. He spent 5 minutes on his laptop, his expression growing darker. Finally, he looked up. We can't sue. What do you mean we can't sue? Richard's voice rose. He's deliberately sabotaging our projects. Technically, he isn't. Morelli Construction Group doesn't directly supply us. They supply the suppliers who supply us. The contracts are structured through intermediaries. Very carefully structured. Gerald's finger traced connections on his screen. If we sue, we'd have to explain these shell company arrangements in court. That means exposing financial structures we've used to avoid taxes and regulatory oversight for 3 years. Silence. How bad? Patricia asked quietly. Federal investigation bad. IRS audit bad. Possibly RICO charges bad. Gerald removed his glasses. These contracts were designed for plausible deniability. They work great when everyone's cooperating. But if we sue, we're essentially revealing our own illegal financial engineering. Richard felt the walls closing in. So, we just let him destroy us. I'm saying litigation isn't an option. At least not against Morelli directly, Gerald thought for a moment. What about City Hall? Can we pressure the permit offices to speed things up? Patricia shook her head. Already tried. Called in every favor. Everyone's suddenly unable to help. Either they're genuinely backlogged or someone's gotten to them first. Someone named Morelli, Richard muttered. Martin, the CFO, cleared his throat. There's another problem. Goldman called again this afternoon. They're conducting a routine review of our loan portfolio. Translation: they're looking for reasons to call our loans early or trigger penalty clauses. Can they do that? If we miss contracted milestones, yes. Hudson Yards missed its foundation deadline. Tribeca is 3 weeks behind. If the Queen's project gets delayed 60 days because of this environmental review, we'll miss that deadline too. Martin pulled up a spreadsheet. 3 missed milestones triggers a review clause. We need to refinance immediately or face default. How much are we talking about? $420 million. Due in 30 days if they invoke the clause. The number hung in the air like a bomb. We don't have that kind of liquidity, Patricia said. I know. Richard stood, pacing to the window. $420 million. They could maybe scrape together half by selling non-core assets. But the other half? We could bring in new investors, someone suggested. With our stock down 7% and construction delays making headlines? Martin shook his head. No major investor will touch us right now. Not at terms we could accept. Then we go back to Morelli, Richard said. Make him an offer. Money. Ownership stake. Whatever he wants. He's not answering your calls, Patricia pointed out. Then I'll go to him. To his office. His home. Wherever he is, I'll find him and what? Gerald interrupted. Apologize? Beg? He's not doing this for money, Richard. He's doing this because your son humiliated his wife and you backed Ethan instead of making it right. Richard turned on him. What was I supposed to do? Throw my own son under the bus? Yes. Patricia's voice cracked through the room. That's exactly what you should have done. Issue a real apology. Fire Ethan from his position. Make it clear that behavior was unacceptable. Instead, you blamed the victim and assumed no one would care about a waitress. I didn't know who she was married to. That shouldn't have mattered. Patricia stood, furious. Even if she'd been married to nobody, what Ethan did was wrong. But you were more worried about protecting the family name than doing the right thing. Now we're all paying for it. Silence fell. No one looked at Richard. Across town, Ethan Marlowe sat in a booth at a trendy Soho nightclub, bottle service on the table, models on either side of him. His phone had been buzzing all evening, Dad, Patricia, Martin, but he ignored them. Your dad's blowing up your phone, his friend Tyler observed. Always is. Ethan took a shot. Probably wants to lecture me more about the video. Like I need another speech about family reputation. Dude, have you seen the news? Your company's stock is tanking. Stock goes up, stock goes down. Ethan waved dismissively. Dad always figures it out. That's what he does. What Ethan didn't see, what he was too drunk and too privileged to notice, was that his father was standing on the edge of a financial cliff. That 4 major construction projects were grinding to a halt. That banks were circling. That the family empire was experiencing the first real crisis in its history. All because Ethan had thought it would be funny to pour Coca-Cola on a waitress. Back in the conference room, Richard's phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. Your lawyers are probably telling you that you can't sue me. They're right. Your politicians are probably not returning calls. Also correct. You built your empire on my foundation, Richard. I can remove it brick by brick. The question is, how much do you want to lose before you're ready to talk? Richard stared at the message, his reflection ghostly in the phone screen. Gerald leaned over. Is that him? Richard nodded. What does he want? He wants me to suffer. To understand what it feels like to be powerless. Richard's voice was hollow. He wants me to beg. Then maybe you should, Patricia said quietly. Before there's nothing left to save. Richard looked around the table at the tired faces, the fear in their eyes. These people had families, mortgages, careers tied to Marlowe Group. If the company collapsed, they all went down. He thought about Ethan, drunk in some club, oblivious. He thought about Sophia Martinez, the woman he'd dismissed as nobody. He thought about the press release he'd authorized, the one that blamed her for being unprofessional.
Patricia was right.
He'd made the wrong choice at every turn. And now the bill was coming due. Set up a meeting, Richard said finally. With Morelli. Whatever it takes. Tell him I'm ready to talk. He's not answering. Then send a message through his office. Tell him Richard paused, the words bitter on his tongue. Tell him Richard Marlowe is ready to apologize. Properly this time. Gerald nodded and left to make the call. Richard sat down heavily, suddenly feeling every one of his 58 years. In 4 days, his empire had gone from thriving to life support. And the man holding the plug was someone he'd never even considered a threat. His phone buzzed one more time. Tomorrow.
10 Uhr morgens. Come alone.
Address to follow. Richard closed his eyes. The war was over. Now came the surrender.
Day 5. 6:47 Uhr morgens.
Luca sat in a diner in Queens across from 3 men in suits. They looked like what they were, investment bankers eager to offload risk before anyone asked questions. Let me get this straight, said Michael Chun from Chase. You want to buy Marlowe Group's construction debt?
Now?
When everyone knows they're having problems? That's exactly when we buy, Luca said calmly. My clients specialize in distressed assets. We see opportunity where others see risk. Your clients being? Sentinel Capital Partners. Private equity. Very quiet, very well-funded, Luca slid paperwork across the table. All legitimate, all traceable to a Cayman Islands shell company that existed only on paper. We're prepared to purchase the Hudson Yards and Tribeca debt at 90 cents on the dollar. Today, Michael and his Goldman counterpart, Lisa Park, exchanged glances. The debt was worth $180 million total. At 90 cents, they'd take a small loss but eliminate exposure to a potentially catastrophic situation. Why so eager? Lisa asked suspiciously. Because in 3 months, when Marlowe stabilizes, that debt will be worth full value again. We're patient. We're also confident they'll recover, Lucas smiled. But we need an answer by noon. After that, the offer expires. It was a lie. Dante didn't think Marlowe would recover. But these bankers didn't need to know that. Michael checked his phone, probably messaging his boss. We'll need to review. No time for review.
Noon deadline.
Take it or keep riding the Marlowe sinking ship, Lucas stood. My number's on the card. Call me when you decide. He left them staring at the paperwork. By 9:30 a.m., Luca had met with 2 more groups. Same pitch. Same tight deadline. Same barely concealed desperation from the bankers. By 10:15 a.m., his phone started ringing. Chase agreed first. 90 cents on the dollar for the Hudson Yards debt. $85 million changing hands by wire transfer before lunch. Goldman followed at 10:47. The Tribeca and partial Queens debt. Another $95 million. A smaller regional bank holding Brooklyn project financing called at 11:20. They were so eager to dump their exposure they accepted 85 cents on the dollar. $48 million. By noon, Dante's network of shell companies controlled $228 million in Marlowe Group debt, roughly 35% of their total outstanding construction financing. Luca called Dante from his car. It's done. We own them. Good. Now we wait. Richard's phone rang at 1:15 p.m. His banker at Chase, Robert Crawford, sounded uncomfortable. Richard, I wanted to give you a heads up about something. What now? Richard's voice was flat. He'd barely slept. We sold your Hudson Yards debt this morning to a private equity firm called Sentinel Capital Partners. Richard sat up straight. You what? It's standard practice. Banks regularly sell construction debt to manage portfolio risk. I wanted you to know because technically your primary lender has changed. Who are these people? Sentinel Capital? They're a private firm. Offshore registration. They specialize in distressed assets. We're not distressed. Richard, Robert's pause said everything. Your stock is down 9%. 3 projects are stalled. The press is asking questions. From our perspective, selling that debt was prudent risk management. How much of our debt did you sell? Just the Hudson Yards project. $85 million. Richard's hands went cold. Who else is selling? I can't speak for other banks. Robert. Who else? You should probably call Goldman. Richard hung up and immediately dialed Lisa Park at Goldman Sachs. We were going to call you, Lisa said, defensive. Market conditions made it necessary. How much? The Tribeca debt and part of the Queen's financing. $95 million total. Richard, this doesn't change anything operationally. You still make the same payments, same terms. To whom? To this Sentinel Capital? And a few other entities. Look, this is completely normal. Banks sell debt all the time. Not all, at once they don't. Not when a developer is in the middle of multiple projects. Richard was shouting now. You're bailing on me. We're managing risk. There's a difference. I've been with Goldman for 10 years. And we hope for 10 more. But recent developments made this necessary. I'm sorry, Richard. She didn't sound sorry.
She sounded relieved.
Your new lenders will contact you about payment processing. The line went dead. Richard sat in his office, his hands shaking. In one morning, 2 major banks had sold his debt to mysterious entities. That never happened. Unless someone was buying it. Someone who wanted leverage. His phone buzzed. Martin, his CFO, calling. Tell me you heard, Richard said. I heard. It's worse than you think. Regional Trust Bank also sold our Brooklyn debt. That's 3 banks, Richard. $228 million in debt changing hands in one morning. To who? Different entities. Sentinel Capital Partners. Hudson Investment Group. Riverside Holdings. All private equity, all offshore. I'm trying to research them now, but... Martin's voice cracked. Richard, I can't find anything. No track records, no public filings, no history. It's like they didn't exist until this week. Richard's blood turned to ice. They're shell companies. That's my guess. All controlled by the same person. Probably. Morelli, Richard said the name like a curse. Almost certainly. Richard stood, walked to his window. Below, construction cranes dotted the skyline, his projects, his legacy. Except they weren't really his anymore. Not if Dante Morelli controlled the debt. What can he do with that debt? Richard asked quietly. Anything he wants. He can call it early if we miss milestones. He can demand immediate payment. He can force us into bankruptcy and pick up our assets in liquidation. Martin paused. Richard, in 48 hours, he went from supplier to creditor. He doesn't just control our supply chain. He controls our financing. We can't move without his permission. The full scope of Dante's strategy hit Richard like a physical blow. This wasn't just about revenge. It was a hostile takeover executed with surgical precision. Disrupt the projects. Tank the stock. Panic the banks. Buy the debt cheap.
Control the empire.
How do we fight this? Richard asked. We don't. We can't. Not without destroying ourselves in the process. Martin's voice was hollow. He's already won, Richard. The question now is what terms he'll offer. Richard's phone buzzed again. The unknown number. Check your bank accounts. Notice anything different? That's what powerless feels like. See you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Address: 847 With Avenue, Brooklyn. Come alone. Bring your son. Bring your son. So this wasn't just about Richard. Ethan would have to face the consequences too. Richard forwarded the message to Ethan with 3 words. Be there.
No excuses.
Then he collapsed into his chair and stared at the ceiling. In 4 days, Dante Morelli had done what Richard thought impossible. He'd taken $1 billion empire and reduced it to a puppet whose strings he now controlled. All because of a glass of Coca-Cola. All because Richard had forgotten a fundamental truth. In New York City, the men who build the foundations hold all the power. And Richard had just learned exactly how much. Tomorrow would be the reckoning. Tonight was just waiting for the axe to fall. The emergency board meeting reconvened at 8 p.m. This time, Ethan Marlowe sat at the table. He'd shown up angry, summoned from a dinner reservation by his father's text that read, "Conference room.
Now.
Your future depends on it." Now, sitting between executives who wouldn't meet his eyes, Ethan's anger was giving way to confusion. "Someone explain what's happening," Ethan said. "And why I had to cancel my plans for this." Richard stared at his son, really looked at him. The expensive haircut, the designer suit, the Rolex that cost more than most people's cars. 27 years old and never worked a real day in his life. Never faced a real consequence. That was about to change. "Tell him," Richard said to Martin. "Tell him what his little prank cost us." Martin pulled up spreadsheets on the conference room screen. "In the last 4 days, Marlowe Group stock has dropped 11%. We've lost approximately $180 million in market capitalization. 3 major construction projects are stalled. 2 city permits are frozen. And as of this morning, we no longer control 35% of our own debt." Ethan blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means," Patricia said coldly, "that someone bought our loans from the banks. Someone who now has the power to bankrupt us whenever they choose."
Who?
"Dante Morelli." Richard's voice was ice. "The husband of the woman you poured Coca-Cola on for fun." The color drained from Ethan's face. "The waitress? Her name is Sofia Martinez," Patricia snapped. "And her husband controls the construction supply chain for the entire city. He's been systematically destroying our company since Tuesday. Because of you." "That's insane. Over some soda? Over humiliation." Richard slammed his hand on the table. "You humiliated his wife in front of hundreds of people while your friends recorded it. What did you think would happen?" "I thought," Ethan faltered. "I thought she was nobody." "She is somebody," Gerald said quietly. "She's married to the most powerful man in New York construction. And you poured soda on her head while your father stood in the background and did nothing." Ethan looked at Richard. "You were there? 10 feet away. Talking to a client," Richard's voice cracked. "I saw the whole thing. I saw you humiliate that woman, and I said nothing because I was more worried about making a scene than doing what was right. So this is my fault." Ethan's voice rose. "Dad, you run this company. You're the one who put out that press release blaming her. Because I was protecting you. Like I always do. Like I've done your entire life." Richard stood, his chair scraping back. "Every DUI I've covered up, every harassment complaint I've settled, every stupid mistake you've made, I've fixed it. But this time, I can't fix it. Because you didn't just offend some random woman. You started a war with a man who literally built cities." The room went silent. Ethan's hands were shaking. "How bad is it?" "We're looking at bankruptcy," Martin said flatly. "In 30 days, if we can't refinance $420 million in debt. And the man holding that debt is Dante Morelli. So, we refinance." "With what?" Patricia interrupted. "What bank is going to lend to us when our projects are stalled, our stock is tanking, and the press is running stories about operational dysfunction? Morelli has made us radioactive. Then we sue him." "We can't," Gerald said. "Our business relationship with him involves financial arrangements that are questionable. If we sue, we expose ourselves to federal investigation, possibly RICO charges." Ethan looked around the table, finally understanding. "So we're trapped." "We're trapped," Richard confirmed. "And it's your fault." "It's our fault," Patricia corrected. "Richard could have fired you on the spot. Could have publicly apologized to Sofia Martinez. Could have made it clear that behavior was unacceptable. Instead, he protected you. We all did. And now we're all paying for it." Ethan's voice was small. "What happens tomorrow?" "Tomorrow, we meet with Dante Morelli. You and me." Richard's eyes were hard. "And we accept whatever terms he offers. Because the alternative is watching 30 years of work disappear." "What kind of terms?" "I don't know. But I guarantee they'll involve you." Richard leaned forward. "You're going to apologize to his wife.
Publicly.
On camera. And you're going to mean it. Because if you don't, we lose everything." "You want me to humiliate myself?" "I want you to experience a fraction of what you put that woman through." Richard's composure finally shattered. "Do you even remember her face? When that soda hit her? The way she froze? The way everyone stared?" Ethan said nothing. You don't, do you? Because she wasn't real to you. None of them are real to you. The staff, the workers, the people who actually build what we design. Richard's voice shook. But they're real to Dante Morelli. And he's spent 4 days teaching us that lesson. Board member James Whitmore cleared his throat. What about going to the press? Telling our side of the story? And say what? Patricia asked. That we're victims? That a construction contractor is being mean to us? We'd look pathetic. Worse, we'd look guilty. We could offer him money, suggested another board member. A settlement. Make this go away. He doesn't want money. Richard pulled up his phone, showing them Dante's text messages. Read these. He's not negotiating. He's not compromising. He's making a point. The board members read in silence, their faces growing graver. He's going to destroy us, someone whispered. No, Richard looked at Ethan. He's going to make us destroy ourselves. Unless we give him what he wants. Which is justice. Accountability. The things we should have given him from the start. Richard stood. Meeting adjourned. Ethan and I have an appointment to prepare for. Everyone filed out except Richard and Ethan. Ethan stared at his hands.
Dad, I'm sorry.
I didn't know. You never know. That's the problem. Richard's anger had burned out, leaving only exhaustion. You've gone through life assuming your actions don't have consequences. That our money and name protect you from everything. But money doesn't matter to a man like Dante Morelli. Power does. Respect does. And you took both from his wife. What's going to happen to me? I don't know. Richard walked to the window. Below, the city glittered.
His city.
Except it wasn't really. It belonged to men like Dante Morelli, the ones who poured concrete and pulled permits and made sure the foundations were solid. Get some sleep, Richard said. Tomorrow, we face the consequences. Both of us. Ethan left without another word. Richard stayed, staring at his reflection in the dark glass. In 48 hours, he'd gone from confident developer to desperate supplicant. And somehow, he knew tomorrow would be worse. Because Dante Morelli didn't just want an apology. He wanted them to understand what it meant to be powerless. And Richard was about to learn. 847, with Avenue was not what Richard expected. No gleaming office tower.
No marble lobby.
Just a plain brick building in Brooklyn with a faded sign reading, Morelli Construction Supply, a few trucks parked outside. Windows that needed cleaning. This was the empire that had brought down Marlowe Group. Richard and Ethan arrived at 9:55 a.m. in Richard's Mercedes. They'd barely spoken during the drive. Ethan looked like he hadn't slept, his usual confidence replaced by visible dread. Let me do the talking, Richard said as they got out. I wasn't planning to say anything. A man in his 40s met them at the door. Compact build, watchful eyes. Mr. Marlowe.
I'm Luca Romano.
Follow me. They walked through a warehouse filled with construction equipment, then up a metal staircase to a second-floor office. Plain walls, metal desk, filing cabinets. A single window overlooking the loading dock. And sitting behind the desk, in jeans and a work shirt, was Dante Morelli. He looked nothing like Richard expected. No expensive suit. No intimidating presence. Just a man who could have been any construction foreman in the city. Except for his eyes, dark, intelligent, and utterly calm.
Sit, Dante said.
Richard and Ethan sat in the 2 chairs facing the desk. Luca stood by the door, arms crossed. Dante studied them for a long moment, saying nothing. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Thank you for meeting with us, Richard began. I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, Dante's voice was quiet, precise. Your son poured Coca-Cola on my wife's head. You watched it happen and said nothing. Then you released a press statement blaming her. I understand perfectly. That statement was a mistake. We were trying to control. You were trying to make it her fault. Make it go away. Like she didn't matter. Dante leaned forward slightly. Do you know what Sophia did that night after your son humiliated her? She came home and told me work was fine. She lied to protect me. To protect you, really, because she was afraid of what might happen if I knew. Richard said nothing. She's worked at that hotel for 4 years. Never missed a shift. Never complained. She's proud of what she does. Dante's voice remained even. And your son treated her like garbage for entertainment. Ethan found his voice. I was drunk. I wasn't thinking. You're always drunk. You're always not thinking. Dante's eyes shifted to Ethan. I know about the DUIs. The harassment complaints. The settlements. You've gone through life believing your money makes you untouchable. Today, you learn different. Mr. Morelli, Richard interjected. We want to make this right. Whatever you need, compensation, a public apology. I don't need anything from you. Dante stood, walking to the window. In 4 days, I've taken your empire to the edge of collapse. Your stock is down 11%. Your projects are stalled. Your banks sold your debt to me. Right now, I own 35% of your financial oxygen. He turned back to face them. I could keep going. Call your loans early. Trigger default clauses. Watch you declare bankruptcy. Then buy your assets in liquidation for pennies on the dollar. Dante's expression didn't change. But that's not what I want. What do you want? Richard asked quietly. I want you to understand something. Dante returned to his desk, sitting down. You build towers, luxury apartments, places rich people live.
But you don't build them.
Men like me do. We pour the concrete, lay the steel, wire the electricity. Without us, you have nothing but blueprints and investor meetings.
He paused.
You forgot that. Forgot that the people who actually build your empire matter. So, I reminded you. Richard nodded slowly. You made your point. We understand.
Good.
Then here are my terms. Dante pulled out a single sheet of paper.
Non negotiable.
He slid it across the desk. Richard read, his face going pale. Ethan leaned over to look. First, Dante said, public apology. Televised. Both of you, to Sophia, acknowledging what happened and taking full responsibility.
No qualifiers. No excuses.
Your PR team will coordinate with mine. Agreed, Richard said immediately. Second, $50 million donated to the Hospitality Workers Relief Fund, a charity that supports restaurant workers dealing with abuse and harassment. The donation happens before the press conference. Richard's jaw tightened, but he nodded.
Done.
Third, 15% ownership stake in your Hudson Yards tower, transferred to one of my investment entities. Non-voting shares, but I want a piece of what I helped you build. That's worth, Ethan started. $80 million, Dante finished. I know. Consider it payment for the empire I let you keep. Richard closed his eyes. $80 million plus $50 million in charity. $130 million total. But the alternative was losing everything. Acceptable, Richard said hoarsely. Fourth, Dante's eyes locked on Ethan. You disappear. No more public events. No more parties that end up on social media. No more representing Marlowe Group at functions. You become invisible. For how long? Ethan asked. Until I say otherwise.
Could be a year. Could be 5.
You'll work in the company, but behind the scenes. No press.
No spotlight.
No more chances to embarrass your family. Ethan's face flushed red. You can't. I can. And I am. Dante's voice never rose. You wanted to humiliate someone for fun? Now you learn what real humiliation feels like. Being reduced to nothing. Being invisible. Ethan, Richard's voice was sharp.
Agreed.
Dad. Agree, or we lose everything. Ethan stared at the desk, his hands clenched into fists. Finally, barely audible. Fine. Dante pulled out 4 copies of a contract. These formalize everything. Sign them. Richard picked up a pen, his hand trembling slightly. He signed all 4 copies. Ethan followed, his signature angry and jagged. Dante signed last, then handed 2 copies back. The press conference is scheduled for tomorrow, noon. My office will send details. The donation needs to clear by tonight. It will, Richard promised. Dante stood. The meeting was over. One more thing, Dante said as they reached the door. Sophia doesn't know I did this. She doesn't know about our business relationship or what I'm capable of. She thinks I'm just a contractor who got lucky. I want to keep it that way. We won't say anything, Richard said. Good. Dante's expression softened slightly. She's a good person. Better than any of us in this room. What you did to her was unforgivable. But I'm giving you a chance to make it right publicly. Don't waste it. Richard nodded, unable to speak. They left, walking through the warehouse, climbing into the Mercedes, driving away from the plain brick building where their empire had been saved at the cost of their pride. $130 million, Ethan said finally. For spilling a drink. No, Richard's voice was hollow. For forgetting that other people matter. That actions have consequences. That money doesn't protect you from everything. They drove back to Manhattan in silence. Behind them, in his office, Dante made a phone call. It's done, he told Luca. Press conference tomorrow. After that, we release the supply chains. Let their projects continue. The debt. We keep it. Insurance policy. They step out of line again, we crush them. Dante hung up and looked at Sophia's picture on his desk. Tomorrow, she'd see justice. Public, televised justice. And she'd never know the war he'd fought to get it. The Marlowe Group press conference was scheduled for noon at their Manhattan headquarters. By 11:30, the lobby was packed with reporters. This wasn't normal. Press conferences about corporate apologies didn't draw CNN, MSNBC, and every major newspaper in the city. But the Sophia Martinez story had touched a nerve. Wealth inequality, workplace abuse, viral justice. Everyone wanted to see how this ended. Sophia sat in her apartment in Brooklyn, watching the live stream on her laptop. Dante had called that morning. Watch the news at noon, he'd said. Trust me. She'd been confused but curious. Now, seeing the Marlowe Group logo on screen, her stomach knotted. The press room filled. Cameras clicked. Reporters murmured. Then Richard and Ethan Marlowe walked in. They looked nothing like the confident billionaires from the gala photos. Richard's face was drawn, gray. Ethan's usual smirk was gone, replaced by obvious discomfort. They took seats at a table with microphones, no PR team flanking them, no lawyers whispering advice. Just two men, alone, facing consequences. Richard cleared his throat. Thank you for coming. We called this press conference to address an incident that occurred last week at a charity gala. He paused, collecting himself. My son, Ethan, poured a beverage on a waitress named Sophia Martinez. He did this deliberately, while others laughed and recorded. I was present.
I saw it happen.
And I did nothing to stop it. The room was silent except for camera shutters. Following the incident, our company released a statement suggesting Ms. Martinez had behaved unprofessionally. That statement was false. Ms. Martinez did nothing wrong. She was simply doing her job when my son decided to humiliate her for entertainment. Richard's voice cracked slightly. What my son did was deplorable. What I did, standing by, then blaming the victim, was equally deplorable. We allowed our wealth and privilege to convince us that other people's dignity didn't matter. We were catastrophically wrong. He turned to the camera, looking directly into it. Ms. Martinez, I am profoundly sorry. You deserved respect, dignity, and basic human decency. Instead, you received cruelty and injustice. There is no excuse for what happened to you. None. Ethan shifted uncomfortably. Richard nodded at him. Ethan leaned toward his microphone. For a moment, Sophia thought he might refuse to speak. Then, quietly, I was drunk. But that's not an excuse. I humiliated you because I thought it was funny. Because I've gone through life treating people as entertainment. As things that don't matter. His voice was tight, fighting emotion. What I did to you is wrong. Completely wrong. And I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. But I'm sorry. A reporter raised her hand. Are you apologizing because you want to, or because your company is facing financial difficulties? Richard didn't hesitate. Both. Our company has suffered consequences for our behavior, As it should. Those consequences forced us to confront what we'd done. To see Ms. Martinez as a real person, not collateral damage in our privileged lives. What consequences specifically? Construction delays. Investor concerns. Stock decline. The market responded to our moral failure with economic consequences. That's appropriate. Another reporter. What about the financial arrangements? Some sources suggest you've lost significant assets. We're making a $50 million donation to the Hospitality Workers Relief Fund, which supports service industry workers facing abuse. Additionally, we're transferring ownership stakes in one of our properties to charity. Richard's jaw tightened. These aren't punishments. They're attempts at restitution. Mr. Ethan Marlowe, a reporter called. Will you continue in your role at Marlowe Group? Ethan looked at his father, then back. I'll be working behind the scenes. No public role. No representing the company. I need to learn that visibility is a privilege, not a right. The humiliation on his face was obvious. Real. The press conference continued for 20 minutes. Question after question. Richard and Ethan answered all of them, never deflecting, never making excuses. When it ended, they left without the usual confident stride. They looked smaller, diminished. Sophia sat frozen, tears running down her face. They'd apologized. Really apologized. On camera. In front of the world. Her phone exploded with messages. Friends, coworkers, strangers who'd followed the story. The video was already going viral, not the original humiliation but this. Two powerful men brought to their knees by accountability. Did you see? Her coworker Maria texted. They actually did it. Sophia couldn't respond. She just watched the replay, over and over, hardly believing it. In a coffee shop, Dante watched on his phone, Luca beside him. It's already got 2 million views, Luca said. Trending #1 on Twitter. The reactions were swift and brutal. This is what actual accountability looks like. Billionaires finally facing real consequences. Never thought I'd see it. That wasn't PR. That was a public execution. Within an hour, the narrative shifted. This wasn't just an apology, it was a symbol. Proof that even the wealthy and powerful could be held responsible. By 3 p.m., the effects rippled through Dante's network. Cement trucks are rolling to Hudson Yards, Victor reported. Just got the green light. Steel delivery confirmed for Tribeca, Tommy added. City permits are suddenly moving forward, Joey said with a smile. Environmental review expedited. Zoning variance approved. It's like magic. It wasn't magic. It was Dante giving a silent signal that the war was over. The Marlowes had paid their debt. Construction could resume. By evening, Marlowe Group stock had stabilized. Up 2% by closing bell. Investors, seeing the public accountability and signs that projects were moving again, stopped panicking. Banks that had been nervous relaxed. Goldman quietly indicated they wouldn't call any loans early. Chase sent Richard a message congratulating him on handling the situation appropriately. The empire was breathing again. But everyone knew the truth. Dante Morelli held the strings. One wrong move, one slip back into arrogance, and he could pull them again. At 8 p.m., Dante came home to his brownstone in Brooklyn. Sophia was in the kitchen making dinner, the TV on in the background still replaying clips of the press conference. She turned when he entered, her eyes red from crying. Did you see? She asked. I saw. He pulled her into a hug. I can't believe they actually apologized. I thought nothing would happen. That people like them never face consequences. Everyone faces consequences eventually, Dante said quietly. Sometimes it just takes longer. Sophia pulled back, studying his face. You seem unsurprised. I'm glad you got justice. That's all. She searched his eyes, some instinct telling her there was more to this story. But she didn't push. Thank you, she said finally, for being here, for supporting me through this. Always, Amor. Always. They ate dinner together, watching the news coverage. Sophia smiled for the first time in a week, reading supportive messages from strangers who'd seen her fight and win. What she didn't know, what she would never know, was that her husband hadn't just supported her. He'd waged a silent war, dismantled an empire, bought their debt, controlled their fate, all without firing a shot. All because someone had forgotten that the woman serving drinks was someone's wife, someone's love, someone who mattered. Dante Morelli had reminded them, and the whole city had watched the lesson. Day 7.
Night.
The city had moved on to new scandals, new outrages. But in certain circles, boardrooms, construction sites, city offices, people still whispered about what had happened to the Marlowes. Dante sat in his living room, reading the Wall Street Journal. The headline, Marlowe Group Stabilizes After Tumultuous Week, Project's Resume. The article praised Richard's transparent accountability and noted that construction delays had mysteriously resolved themselves. Analysts called it a remarkable recovery. They had no idea what had really happened. Sophia came downstairs, fresh from a shower, wrapped in Dante's old college sweatshirt. She curled up beside him on the couch. "Still reading about it?" she asked. "Just checking the aftermath." She was quiet for a moment then. "Dante, can I ask you something?" "Always." "How did all this happen? The apology, the press conference, everything?" Her eyes searched his face. "It feels like more than just public pressure." Dante set down the newspaper. He'd known this conversation would come eventually. Sophia was too smart not to wonder. "What do you think happened?" he asked carefully. "I think," she chose her words slowly, "I think the Marlowes had some very unfortunate problems this week. Construction problems. Financial problems. Problems that made them realize they needed to make things right. That's one way to see it. And I think," she continued, "that my husband, who works in construction, might know more about those problems than he's telling me." Dante met her eyes. "Would you want to know?" "Really?" Sophia considered this. The past week, watching powerful men brought low, seeing justice done, it had felt like a miracle, like the universe finally balancing itself. But miracles didn't just happen. Someone made them happen. "You didn't just offend me," she said quietly. "You took down an empire, didn't you?" Dante smiled faintly.
"No, amor."
"I reminded them who builds their foundations. There's a difference. How much of it was you? Does it matter?" "I guess not." Sophia leaned her head on his shoulder. "I just want to know one thing. Are you safe? Did you do anything that could come back on us?" "Everything I did was legal. Complicated, but legal." Dante kissed the top of her head. "And it's over now. They learned their lesson. We move forward." Sophia nodded, accepting this. Some questions didn't need full answers. "I love you," she said. "Whatever you did or didn't do, thank you for having my back. Always." "That's not negotiable." They sat in comfortable silence, the TV playing low in the background. 3 weeks later, Ethan Marlowe's Instagram account went dark. No more nightclub photos. No more yacht parties. No more designer suits and champagne bottles. Friends texted. He didn't respond. Tabloids called his publicist. No comment. He still worked at Marlowe Group, in a windowless office on the 4th floor, reviewing contract proposals and market reports. Important work. Invisible work. His assistant brought him coffee one morning. "Rough night, Mr. Marlowe?" "Every night's rough," Ethan muttered. He'd learned what true powerlessness felt like. Not having money taken away, his trust fund was intact. But having relevance taken away. Being nobody. Being invisible. Just like he'd made Sophia feel. The lesson was carved into his bones now. Richard Marlowe met with Dante once a month, always at the Brooklyn warehouse, always alone. They reviewed ongoing projects, discussed supply schedules, maintained their business relationship. Richard never missed a meeting, never questioned prices, never complained about terms. He'd learned his place in the ecosystem. "The Hudson Yards Tower is ahead of schedule," Richard reported. "Should complete by July." "Good." Dante reviewed the paperwork. "And the donation?" The charity. 50 million is fully deployed. They've already helped 200 workers dealing with harassment cases. Dante nodded approval. Your son. Invisible. As requested.
He's
Different now. Quieter. Maybe even learning something. Good for him. Richard hesitated then. I wanted to thank you for not destroying us completely. You could have. I didn't need to destroy you. I needed you to understand. Dante met his eyes. You understand now, yes? Yes, Richard's voice was barely a whisper. I understand. He left with his signed contracts, driving back to Manhattan, still building towers, but never forgetting who made them possible. For weeks after the press conference, Sophia returned to work at the Riverside Grand Hotel. She'd considered quitting. The memories were painful, but she realized that would be letting them win in a different way. So she walked through those doors with her head high. The staff applauded when she entered. Quietly, respectfully, but they applauded. Marco hugged her. Even the manager, red-faced and awkward, mumbled an apology. I should have defended you that night. I'm sorry. Sophia nodded. Thank you. She worked her shift, served tables, brought drinks, did her job with pride. When wealthy patrons came through, some recognized her. A few whispered. Most looked away, uncomfortable. But Sophia noticed something else. They were polite now. Careful. They said please and thank you. They didn't snap fingers or make demands. Word had spread. The waitress who brought billionaires to their knees. The woman you didn't disrespect. At the end of her shift, an elderly woman at table 7 left a note with her tip. Thank you for showing them that dignity matters. We're all rooting for you. Sophia folded the note carefully and put it in her pocket. That night, she came home to Dante cooking dinner, his terrible attempt at pasta that would probably be inedible but would be made with love. How was work? He asked.
good.
Really good. Actually, she kissed his cheek. People were nice, respectful, as they should be. I think I'm going to be okay, Sophia said. Better than okay. I feel like
I matter now.
people see me. Dante turned from the stove, taking her hands. You always mattered, Amor. Some people just needed to be reminded. She smiled. My mysterious husband who builds foundations. That's me. They ate terrible pasta and laughed about their day and talked about ordinary things. Because that's what they were. Ordinary people. A contractor and a waitress. Building a life together in Brooklyn. The world would never know that Dante Morelli controlled the city's construction empire. That he'd brought down billionaires with a phone call and rebuilt them with a nod. That was fine. He didn't need recognition. He just needed Sophia to smile when she came home, to walk with her head high, to know she was protected, valued, loved. Everything else was just concrete and steel. Foundations holding up a city that would never know his name. And that's exactly how Dante wanted it.